Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The final day of the Premier League is wrapped up.
Yep.
That means one thing here. It's time to embarrass ourselves. It's time to expose ourselves.
Yeah, this year might be a little bit grim. Like, looking back at it now, there was a few boldish predictions made, probably based on the back end of last year and probably a lack of transfers when we had done it.
Done this, yeah.
But when you look back at it, you probably apart from two teams, the rest of the teams really just ended up where they always end up.
Yeah.
And we went quite bold in the sense of thinking maybe some of these middle place teams to bottom end teams would skyrocket up or down the ladder. So
we are talking about a lot of predictions. So last season, the standard was pretty high, I think, considering what we've seen this season from us.
All in the low to mid 50s.
Yeah, did Flynn crack 40 points?
He did.
So he was 48. We were 50-ish.
Yeah.
I think so. You came second. I came last. I'm hoping I don't come last this year. To wait and see. But I think Flynn has won again, by the way.
I'll say it though. We all probably are going to have plus a lot this year on what we did last year. I feel like last year's predictions were quite good when you look at it like holistically.
Mm-hmm.
A plus 48, a plus 52, a plus 54, whatever it was in the end, looked, quite good. When you got 20 teams and there's always going to be those one or two plus like eights.
Yep.
So, but this year, I think...
Let's track as we track with the ladder. But the point system is basically how many positions you are away from your original prediction. Let's do it based on the real Premier League ladder, and then we'll tell where we put the team based on where they were. In the ladder. So obviously bottom of Southampton. I had them 19th.
I had them 17th.
See them staying up. See them as the one team to. Do you have one team staying up? Or two
I had
teams?
two.
Two teams.
Yeah,
Next season, you're not putting any team.
Again, it was like one of those things going, last year, the year before, everyone went down. This year's going to be different. I was quite confident on the other team that I kept up. I think actually remembering when we spoke about this with Southampton, I was like more hopeful that something would change in the Premier League.
Yeah, but
more so than I think thinking they were going to stay up.
Your heart showed.
Yeah. The heart came in because I was like, this can't continue like this, and it has.
It has.
And it's starting to bring big question marks up to the Premier League.
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
whole league in general.
Well, there's 17 teams that have just basically placed themselves in the Premier League borderline forever at this point if something doesn't change.
You need some sort of, something to break it up. So we had, I gained 1 point there, you gained 2 points. 3 points. Second to bottom was Ipswich. I had Ipswich bottom. Only 1 point gain for me again.
Yeah, I had Ipswich bottom.
Okay, so 1 point each there. That's expected. We didn't expect too much from them. Leicester is the third team to go down. Obviously, another promoted side. I had them 16th on my tables. I had a +2 there on that.
I had them the exact same place, the 16th.
16th. So we've had the exact same for Ipswich and Leicester. I'm currently on 4 points. You're on 7, I think.
Yep.
All right, this is the big one. Spurs in 17th after the results last night. I had Spurs all the way up in 6th.
I had them in 7th.
So 10 points, 11 points for me. Again, this is one of those ones you can't predict because they sacked off the league in basically February.
Yeah, it was a hard one looking back at it, like especially after what Ange did last year. But there were telling signs, I would say, in the sense that that there was a few injuries. The back end wasn't as good last year, and we seen this very much throughout Ange's tenure that if he doesn't have his exact players on the park, he can't. He can't do much.
Yeah. Look, next is going to make it even more difficult because how do you trust this team going forward? But yeah, they were 17th.
Yep.
That means Wolves ended up finishing 16th last night after their draw. I had Wolves 13th. So I don't know why I had them so high, by the way. In my mind, I don't know what I'd done there, but I had them 13th, meaning I gained 3 points.
I had them 14th.
So 2 points. That's not too bad. Yeah. I don't know why to this day I've got Wolves above some of the teams I've got there, but I must have just felt happy about it. United's win last night. We're finally off the relegation battle. We moved up into 15th place.
Yep.
I had United 4th. 11
I had
points.
United 3rd, 12.
12 points. Every season we back them.
Well, it's just one of those things, like, I think we came off that FA Cup.
Yeah.
We saw what we did 2 years ago. We saw also quite good transfers.
Good signings.
From maybe looking back at it now, they might not be as good as we thought. But
I think they're still pretty good.
yeah, but we saw quite good signings, and we also saw players who we look back at now who didn't have a good year, who we thought were young, had a decent-ish year last year, and we thought, could they kick on? The likes of Rasmus, the likes of Kobe, the likes of Garnacho, who had actually started to get a lot of game time, and you thought, well, a good pre-season under their belt, a
Big
good year.
season. Yeah.
It's like, well, why can't they just take it even a little bit to that next level? Like, we finished 8th the year before, a little bit of a step, and there was a nice little bundle up, I would say, that year before between like 8th and 5th. So,
and we had Europa League as well, and you thought Europa League would mean you'd focus on Prem, but
exactly
it went the other way around. All right, next position, West Ham. Now, this is a big one. I had them 7th place.
I had them 5th.
The mighty West Ham.
I was huge on West Ham.
I think we all were, but you were like adamant they were going to be massive.
The year before they finished 6th or 7th, one of the two.
They would have been just out. They would have been like
8th.
top half. Yeah,
8th, whatever they finished, and they made some good signings. Once again, it looked like all the little problems they had in their team was like, okay, well, we've solved these type thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, when you look at the team that finished 8th, you looked at their problems, which was their defence.
Yeah.
They brought in Wan-Bissaka.
Yep.
They made a couple other signings. They brought in
Krug up top.
Yeah.
Tadibo at the back.
Tadibo. It looked like they were missing a striker. They were missing a couple of defenders. Brought in some real quality around.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things, like those signings they made, probably bar Wan-Bissaka, was coming from a different league and once again flopping like a lot of people do. Yeah. A lot of these 25 to 40 to $50 million signings, they continually flop in the Premier League after being outstanding in other leagues.
Yeah. Look, the season review on them when we do that, the grading a bit, like obviously it looks good now, the season's over, but United have sacked it off, Spurs sacked it off. I think it was much more grim than what most people will see when you look back at the table.
Oh, definitely.
Because they were never really in it this season. Everton next. Now, this is a good season for them. Obviously, David Moyes, we didn't see him being there. And that's why I think I'll give us some credit in the back pocket. Yep. I had them relegated. I had them 18th.
I had them 15th.
See, that's not bad of a prediction. Because that's sort of where they sort of sit, right? 13th in the end.
Yeah, they probably could have been 15th for a lot of the season.
They could have been.
I don't know, I've always been big on
Dyche.
Yeah, Dyche, that type of football.
Yeah.
And I think they've always signed managers, even if they sack one off.
They get a good one in, eh?
Yeah, to continue on their path. They're not bothered about football path, about modern day path. It's their path. Because like we've seen with a lot of other teams, they bring in these managers who don't complement the players they have.
Yeah, 100%.
And nothing wrong with that, but it's always going to take a lot longer time. When you bring in a manager that's pretty similar, but maybe fresh ideas, which is how they probably look at it. Yeah. It's pretty similar like playing style, but with fresh ideas, a few tweaks. Yeah. That's what I think they more look at, those tweaks. They go, okay, well, we've probably had enough with this manager. We need to tweak a few things around, but we don't want to go over the top, because especially a team like Everton, if they go over the top, that could end up in relegation very easily.
Yeah. They're that fine line, and they've been, I think that's why I put him there. They have been the fine line where they saved themselves in the last day for the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And I'm like, this year just might be their year. But in the end, like, look, the sacking of Dyche and the appointment of Moyes was fantastic, because I think he only lost like 5 games when he took over.
When you look at it, like, you wanted to keep Leicester up. I think everybody wanted to keep Leicester up. Everyone thought Leicester was going to be different, even though Burnley did it the year before.
Same thing, yeah.
I think the difference we all saw with Leicester was that the players they had that brought them up was players that have actually performed before in the Premier League.
Players, yeah. Yeah.
Like, there was still a couple of players that, although probably a lot older, aging, lack of quality at that age, who were in that team that finished fourth.
They had some
Yeah.
familiar faces. It's just that I think Flynn said it a lot though. Like, we keep giving these guys credit for this one season or like their past, and we think they're still amazing. But realistically, like as much as they got them in Europe, they also got them relegated.
Yeah.
And they also now got them relegated again. So like we probably should have seen it. But again, like you were saying, like I'll probably do again in 2 months' time, I'll still have someone staying up because like
it was a hard one. They even like the likes of like a Harry Winks who was a starting midfielder in the Champions League final.
You're like,
surely that's enough.
Yeah, you think
that's what you're thinking in the back of your head.
Yeah.
Surely that's enough to keep you up when you got players like that.
Yeah.
Because it was different to Burnley. Burnley had players who, if I would, to be completely honest, I didn't know who they were going into the season.
Yeah. And it was just a blank slate with different style, and they committed to being so attacking, and it just never worked out for them.
But yeah.
All right, next is Palace. I had them as 10th. They obviously finished 12th. I'm going to take that as a mini win. Obviously, FA Cup, they would have taken a bit of focus away. But look, 12th place is a great season. Getting their season graded in a bit. But classic Palace, isn't it? Just finishing 12th.
Yeah, I had them 11th.
Yeah, look, that's the banker in the end of the day, Palace. All right, in 11th with Fulham, I had them 11th. So I got a bang on there, the first bang on of the video.
I had them 10th.
So not too far away.
Yeah.
This is, I think, where we get a very
patch. I think there's a patch probably from, well, when I look at my actual ladder predictions.
Yeah.
From about that 7th, 8th spot till 15th, where I look at it and it's like +3, the highest, plus maybe 1 +4.
Yeah, it's nice and tight in here.
Yeah.
Brentford ended up finishing 10th. I had them in 14th. Bit mad about this. Probably should have them above Wolves, but look, another great season for Brentford. I can probably see us predicting them being there again next year.
I had them 12th.
Oh, gee, so you've really gotten close here.
Yeah, but I've had a lot of outliers that have ruined my whole list.
Look, that's another good thing. Yes, 2 points again from you there again.
Yep.
Bournemouth in 9th. They had a win last night that propelled them from 12th all the way up to 9th. I had them in 12th.
I had them 13th.
So again, not too far away. So I gained 3 points. You gain 4 points.
Yep.
Nice and tight. Okay, here comes the top half where things can go a little bit shaky sometimes. Brighton were next. Look, they didn't make many signings, and I lost some key players. They finished 8th. I had them 15th.
I had them 19th.
Going down, you them longer.
Yeah, looking back at it, it was so rogue. But I looked at the back end of last year, and I also looked at the quality they had in their team, and I probably should have seen it, that every single year they bring in these players that are just amazing for 2 million, 3 million. Yeah. Once again, it showed this year. But I was just like, how long can this last? How long can they keep finding the diamonds in the rough? How long can they keep probably performing above the expectations of their players through pure managers and playing style, which has been great for 3-4 years now. But I was just like, how can they continue on this path, on this trajectory for so long? And I was looking at the teams around them, and I was like, well, I've got to put one down.
Yeah.
And I also, probably tried to go a little bit bold with the predictions, but it was, utterly stupid looking back at it now.
I'm looking at it now. I'm pretty sure Ruter wasn't signed yet.
No.
Minter was signed. I don't know if it, like, there might have been a few players not signed when we did this, but still, the names they brought in, far from like groundbreaking.
And but looking back at it, they lost their bigger players the year before.
But they lost their manager as well. I think that was the big thing for us.
It was like
the big thing. We respect De Zerbi pretty highly.
No, we did, but we look back at it, and this team just continually does it. We're going to have a few reality checks when we do the list next year, because it'll be like everything we thought was like, well, we just need to back history now.
Yeah, mind rather than heart. To do
well, not even, that, but also just history. It's like, well, Brighton X, West Ham, that was an outlier one-off season.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to have a real look at like the past 3 to 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Whereas more so, I think there was a lot of reactionary stuff based off the last 10 games, lack of signings, maybe looking at a lack of quality. But when you go look at the team as itself, you go, well,
team.
wait a minute.
It's a good team.
Wait a minute. Like, they just continually are finishing now 11th to 9th. So,
I'm about to say, I'd be bold to not put him, from 12th to 8th next season.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
their
definitely.
bracket. And by the way, you said all the young players they brought in. Shout out Danny Welbeck. I put him as their most important player from this season. Leading goal scorer from the 38-year-old or whatever he is now.
yeah,
Really good set. I think he was really important
very
for them.
good, especially
finishing where they
expecting
were.
that probably a lot of people thought Ferguson,
Ferguson, Pedro.
yeah, we're going to really come through.
Yeah. Now look at Ferguson's at bloody West Ham. Didn't end up for him. So stinker for you, stinker for me. I got 7 points there. This is bound to be a stinker. Nottingham Forest, I had them just avoiding the drop again in 17th. They finished in 7th.
Item 18th.
Yeah, okay. So you had two. That's
They were the two. Looking at it again, they actually are the ones who probably are the complete opposite to Brighton.
Yeah.
Had the quality,
Yeah.
but had shown nothing.
Never showed anything.
Yeah, so, and they were the ones where it was like they were been avoiding relegation the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Staying up. And it just shows the like contrasting things. Like Brighton are the team that in the end just continually able to play decent football and keep themselves up through pure tactics.
Yeah.
And then you had Forest, who were the team that had the players but just were doing nothing in terms of like the connection and chemistry on the pitch, being able to actually gel, being able to actually have tactical prowess going forward.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that all clicked. And we've actually spoke about it before, that Forest were that team who...
When it went.
Yeah, when it went, it could have gone because they had quality. Yeah. And they are exhibit A, in my opinion, for every championship team coming forward. Because although it's taken a while, it was like, okay, let's splash the cash early. And it's worked. Yeah. So at least now, I think prior to maybe this year, a lot of championships teams could have looked at it and gone 150 to 200 mil, in which a lot of those clubs don't have or will be pushing to have.
Yeah.
Are we really going to do this when it doesn't work, when you don't have the time? Because very easily you go straight down and you just lose all these players, lose all the money.
Yeah.
Everyone knows in those contracts that if you sign someone for 50 mil, there's like some clause that goes, oh, well, you could get sold for 20 mil if you get relegated, type thing. So
the only worry though is the PSR and how strict they are now, because Forest obviously got the points deduction. That's why they got saved in the final day last year. But look, do you just say we'll take the 5 points and I will build a squad that's good enough to be a 45-point team? Because that's sort of what Forest has done here. They've gone like,
well, now,
get rid of who cares about the rules? We're going to build a squad that's so good.
They just need to hold it on for long enough that they don't get affected in their first season.
To the Man City mode.
Yeah, so get like the point deduction in their second season, in which...
And they're more established.
Yeah.
It could be the mindset, because you're right, Forest have nailed it pretty much. Obviously, they went through a bit of heartache. 2 or 3 seasons of struggle. And then look at them now, and they're just like established.
Definitely, yeah.
And look, next season will be tough because they're in Europe, and that's a whole different story. But if you manage to be a top half next year with Europe, that's a good model. That's a Brighton going forward.
Correct.
You've got the squad, you've got the
and
foundation.
they've got the squad now.
Yeah.
And it's a type thing that you look at and you go, why won't they finish top 10 next year? When you look at their team on paper, unless they're going to sell everybody, in which Forest seem to have a little bit of money, also high expectations, it looks like.
Yes.
Very high expectations that I wouldn't expect them to go sell everybody. There might be one or two that go for quite big money, and I feel like they will replicate and bring someone else in.
I think the centre-back's the big one. Try and keeping one of them.
Yeah.
I think Gibbs White now, he doesn't... Man City did want him, but Man City's signing like everyone else.
Yeah.
So look, if only lose one centre-back and maybe, I don't know, Chris Wood drops off in form, you can replace an out-of-form striker and you can replace a centre-back.
And I think with the quality they've got all round now, the likes of Alanga and there's so many more that when you look at a really strong centre-back partnership, their midfield's starting to look good, that if Chris Wood was to go lose form, if they were to lose a centre-back, I would see them dropping, but I don't think there would be a significant drop where like relegation, for example, would come into question anymore.
Yeah, they're well clear of that now.
Yeah, so great mould they've done there. I think it is the mould for a championship team to stay up.
Especially like a Leeds, like a rich old club like Leeds. Like, look, Sunderland might have, I don't know how much money Sunderland have, but they're a big club.
Yeah.
They've come back. Maybe, you do that. You go and splash 120, 150 million, take the hit maybe a bit later on, get your lawyers signed up and try and start. Because, look, you're right. It worked 100% with Forest. All right, the big boys. These are Europa League and Champions League qualifications.
Okay.
Villa came 6th. I had them 5th.
I had them 4th.
Yeah, we were all pretty big on Villa.
Yeah.
And this was, actually, that's pretty bold from both, considering they were Champions League, but we did back them in just to, Unai Emery, do the job, rotate the squad. And look, they probably did it to a T. They started poorly, they worked their way up, and they finished probably where everyone expected.
An overall season, when you bring everything involved, like Champions League and everything, I would say it was a positive season for them still in the end. Because it's that season, like we saw with Newcastle, where it's after they've achieved something quite significant.
Yeah.
And then they've got both competitions running simultaneously.
Yeah.
They were able to build a squad with quite a bit of depth.
Yeah.
So the rotation was there. But when you look at it, it was so close from that third position. Yeah. Even second, Arsenal
they got dropped into it.
Dropped into it. But more so that third position to them. And we're talking like very much even till the final day. Like if they beat United, they had a Champions League spot.
They're in the top 5, and I would have got a bang-on prediction again. But
so, like when you look at it, I don't think you can fault Villa because they have shown now that they're up there with the big boys. So there's that. Yeah, well, you could probably take United and Spurs out of it and chuck Newcastle and Villa in, because when you look at it now, you don't see a team that could finish, in my opinion, below 8th. Could they in 5-10 years? Yes, but
not next 5.
No,
I don't reckon.
Not anytime soon.
Yeah.
Like I think 8th is really
the lowest.
Yeah, the lowest they can go to, because that squad's good now. They've really laid the foundation. Mm-hmm. They're a European team now. They showed that they were able to cope with 2 quite high competitions, or the highest
2 competitions,
and go quite far in the Champions League as well.
Quarterfinal Champions League, FA Cup semi-final.
We're as competitive as Arsenal were against PSG, if not more competitive.
Yeah,
they had
they took the game to them.
Yeah, there was a couple Rashford chances where they could have took it to extra time, very much so.
Yeah.
So,
and you're saying that as well. They built depth in January with some good signings.
Very
Asensio, Rashford. They obviously signed Marlon, but like it was a good year for depth for them. So they really established themselves there.
Yep.
We get into their grade a little bit. Top 5, Newcastle end up holding on despite losing. I had them 9th.
Same.
See, I thought they'd just sort of continue, continues to establish himself, build a bit of rapport in the top half. But this was a big year.
Yeah, well, probably different to Villa. I just saw a little bit of a lack of quality for them to be a Champions League team.
Well, Jacob Murphy gets 14 or 12 assists in the season, so no one saw that coming. Obviously, Tonali comes back properly.
And he played pretty good.
And he played very well. I didn't think he'd be this good coming back.
No,
he missed the whole season.
That's what I'm saying.
So that's fair enough, I think.
He missed the whole season, and it was also, again, those question marks of coming over to the Premier League. So we didn't know what we were going to get, and it was a big money signing, and you were expecting, in the end of the day, him to be quite good at 70 million. But it was one of those things. How many of these 70 million signings from the Serie A, from La Liga, from Bundesliga that come in and don't show enough, that look like they're $15 million signings? Because the change of pace of the Premier League is the biggest thing I think players are getting found out by. They come from these leagues where it's a lot more build up, it's a lot more breakdown, and all of a sudden you've got these teams who are just going and going and going. It's just, I think, they really need that adjustment period, and some players just don't suit it in the end of the day. We've seen it.
Yeah. And Tonali could have been like the prime example of missing a season, bit leggy.
Exactly.
Newcastle need a high energy system.
His mould though does work. We've seen his mould he's quite physical and he's quite fast.
Yeah.
He's there to break up the play, and he's really there for those counter attacks.
Yeah, he makes the counter attack.
Yeah. For both defending it and going.
Going for it as well.
So, in the end of the day, his mould is one that should always work in the Premier League.
Absolutely agree. And look, maybe I was a little bit harsh and On Newcastle, then putting them 9th.
Yeah.
Chelsea next, they ended up finishing 4th. I had them 8th, another 4-point gain
Exactly
for me.
the same as me, 8th.
I think we had the same thing. We just, new manager. Obviously, the way it finished last season. And look, I think West Ham had a better summer. Tottenham obviously were above them. Villa, we liked more. That little pack there was very hard to predict. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a leeway there. Top 3 now.
Yep.
And we'll get into their season reviews in a tick. But this is interesting. So I had Liverpool in 3rd. Man City ended up finishing in 3rd.
Yes.
So I got a 2-point gain there because I had Man City FC winning the title.
Yeah.
So that's 2 points gained for me. I had Arsenal 2nd, which is 0 points. Obviously Liverpool 1st. I had them 3rd. So I've got 2 points gained for Liverpool, 0 points gained for Arsenal, and 2 points gained for Man City. And you had your top 3 as...
I had Liverpool down in 6.
Yeah.
I had City in 2nd and Arsenal in 1st. So only +1s there. So
yeah,
not completely terrible.
It's just that Liverpool one that really threw it away.
Again, it was me probably being a Liverpool hater to be number 1. But also, when you look at it, they had this big era, the Klopp era, and that had come to an end, and they didn't seem to bring in too much. We probably had seen the year before the dependency on Salah, and in the end of the day, that's what won him the league.
Salah,
but if you looked at probably the last 3 years, he looked like he had dropped off. The output was still there.
Yeah.
But we know with Salah in the past that the output has to be really high because of what he gives for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
The lack of defending.
Yeah.
The lack of everything else. So, for Salah to have a good season, he needs to probably have 25 goal contributions.
Yeah.
And he's done that every year in the past, but he just took it to a next level this year.
Yeah.
It was get on my back in terms of an attacking output because they had nothing else in the attacking output bit. They were very good defensively, like we probably should have expected. Their midfield ran quite smoothly, I would say, but they had nothing else. He was the one-man show up there to win a Prem. And when you look at that, it's quite astonishing.
29 goals, 18 assists. Was that 47?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I think he came off 30, which 30 is high, but 47's taking it to that next level.
Yeah, that's Messi, Ronaldo areas.
Yeah, and he just did it for such a long period of time, which we also didn't expect. I think, when you look at his age, you don't expect someone to be able to be levels above every other player in the Prem.
Yeah.
In a league that everyone classifies as the best league in the world.
Most competitive league, yeah.
Yeah, and just continually do that. And I think that's where I came into it. New manager, it was I also took into consideration how Liverpool have been for 30 years. And I thought of it more being Klopp as the outlier.
Rather than
building this massive list.
Yeah.
And I looked at the Liverpool squad, and it's a good squad. Obviously, compared to when Klopp came in, etc., way better. But in the end of the day, when we're comparing it to Premier League squads, is it better than that City squad? Maybe yes or no. No. Is it better than the Arsenal squad? Probably no. When you start to look even at the Villa squad, is it better? Maybe on par.
Yeah, probably on squad.
Well, probably looking at it now, if Salah's going to perform like that, if Verge is going to perform like that. But going into the season, you go, well, Verge had a good 12 months the year before. But we're talking about 12 months in the last 4 years, it probably was, between the missing 2 years of injury, and he had that one poor year.
If you had to correlate it, though, it would be like Watkins versus Nunez, and you would have given it to Watkins. You would have given it to, who did they start the season? Leon Bailey.
He came off quite a good year.
He would have won the left-hand side. Obviously, Salah gets the right-hand side. You'd probably go with Morgan Rogers into the season over Szoboszlai. You definitely wouldn't have Gravenberch because no one even knew who was going to start.
That's what I'm saying.
So you have
probably McAllister's the only one that...
McAllister, Van Dijk, Salah, and Alisson would be the combined 11.
Yeah.
That'd be it probably going to... Maybe Trent. But outside of that, you would have picked every Villa player in their starting 11, the combined 11 at the start of the season on top. Because you said no signing. They got Chiesa and they got maybe one more player in there. But like, look, it was supposed to be Endo McAllister. That's what I thought it was going to be, Endo McAllister again.
Well, that was the thing again.
And you guys were rightly, you said it, and it probably ended up happening, just not to a same degree. Salah after match day 30 is not the same as Salah the first 20 match days.
Yeah, you got to take into consideration his age. He's going a long season, and it is always gonna be hard.
And no AFCON this year, so that's probably benefits him in the end of the day because he used to have awful times post AFCON.
Yep.
But look, those three at the top probably helped me because I only get a combined of 4 points at the top there. I had 2 perfects, Arsenal and Fulham. Do you have any perfects in the end?
No, I had numerous +1s.
But no
I'm not worried about the perfects because in the end of the day, they're not the things that make your list.
Yes. As Flynn showed last year, I think he had 1 perfect and he still won it.
Yeah, they're not the things that make your list. It's the big ones because when you're talking about +1s, if you can have 10 +1s, but then you have a +12, a +10, that's the things that really kill you.
Changes it.
I think, to be quite consistent with this list, you need to start getting those like outlier ones to +6 to 8 instead of
to get that
10
really
to 12.
low score.
Yeah, and trying to really limit those. And in the end of the day, when you look at, I know it's easy to look at something after it's happened, but a lot of these predictions could have been limited, in my opinion, when I look at it. Like,
if you weren't crazy.
I would say the Spurs prediction, I don't know if I could have done much different there. I put them in like an 8th, 7th or 8th, whatever I put them in, around there. And I'd say I wouldn't have changed that, even like logically thinking, instead of thinking from the heart. I think United one could have changed that. That when you look at it, you're probably expecting this from United. A 6th to 8th would be more reasonable.
Yeah, 8th would be,
And then my Brighton and Forest ones. Forest, I think everyone had them in that bottom 5 to 6.
Yeah, I think that's,
Probably had them a bit lower than everyone else. And then Brighton was probably in looking at it, putting Brighton anywhere below 15th. And even that
is pushing it.
Yeah.
100%.
And they make differences because you put them 15th instead of 19th. That's
4 points.
4 points,
And that could be the difference in winning or losing. Now, look,
exactly.
Flynn didn't send me his points, but I think he was around the 75, 78 mark.
That's a
lot
higher than me.
I think it's very good this season. I ended up on 80 points this season.
I ended up with 91.
So it's a roles reversed. It's a roles reversed last season. You've dropped into 3rd, I've gone to 2nd.
Yeah, but I think at least it was quite tight last year.
Yeah, what was that, 11-point differential this year?
Yeah, it's like I've gone to the beach at match day 20.
You done Tottenham. You sacked it off in February. You said, no, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. I look back at it and it's quite disappointing because a 91 is what I ended up
we won
with.
50s last year.
Yeah, and it was a harder season to predict. But again, there was a lot here that I go, why? Like, we've got 5 over +10. We've got 3 +11s at a +12, a +10. Then from there, the next highest is a +4. But when you put a combined, 56 points from 5 teams.
Just the big ones, yeah.
That's already... I probably got more from those combined 5 teams than I did in the whole season last year.
Yeah. You got 5 teams as equal to last year. I had 3 big teams of 32 and then plus some 7s in there. And that
again,
shows.
though, those probably 7s make a difference.
That, in the end of the day, it probably separates the two of us. But look, that's how it ended up.
Yep.
We need to bounce back next year. We need some
definitely. I think
predictions for next season.
I think I might go a bit into my shell for next year's predictions.
Get the spreadsheet out, start marking the numbers.
I think in the end of the day, it's like when you do footy tipping in the end of the day, if you just back the bookies, you're probably going to end up top 5 in your comp.
Yeah.
Type thing, you know what I mean?
Back the market.
But like, and this is the same. It's like, if you just back what is expected, you're probably going to end up better off than not.
In the long term. Yeah.
Yes, you'll probably get 1 or 2 wrong because always there's going to be outliers.
Yeah.
But
when you start 1 or 2, then like 4.
Exactly. And when you start going so rogue, in the sense of thinking, like, I think we started to think that we're putting our Jose Mourinho hat on and we're going this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And Forest, they're going down and, Brighton, the quality's not there type thing. And it was, in the end of the day, it was
never going to happen, was it?
No. So
stop lying to ourselves. Let me just quickly rush over a few of the games from last night. City got a massive win over Fulham to secure their spot.
Yep.
Gundogan again. I don't know if you saw the bicycle kick. He scored this crazy bicycle kick in that game. Once again, last day merchant there, but they secured that third spot. Liverpool 1-1 draw to Palace. That was just an absolute piss up in that game there. Everton beat Newcastle away thanks to Alcaraz. The big ones obviously Chelsea, Forest. I've watched this one pretty closely. Colwell, man of the match, got the goal. Big game for him. Really deserved for Chelsea the way they ended their season off. And then our boys United probably put their best game of the last 15 months together to beat Aston Villa. That was total football. That was dominant. That was a dodgy decision with the Bayendia foul on him. But outside of that, 2-0. I hate they've given it to us in the last day of the season because now I want more football.
Yeah.
But look, some way I didn't think they'd bounce back at all, but they bounced back big time considering the chaos that was on Wednesday. 67% possession, 25 shots versus Aston Villa is out of this world. 10 shots on target, double their passes, double the touches. Like, everything was in United's favour. It was a dominant home win.
Yeah, we've spoken about this off cam, on cam, everything. And the whole United Spurs thing is really, really interesting because when you look at both of them, maybe not so much Spurs. See, the thing when I look at it, I actually think that Amorim deserves to be sacked more than Ange.
For what reason?
I just think that the trophy for Spurs is so important. Yeah. Like, I think that you have to give Ange time, at least the first 3 months of that season, just to see how it goes, because we're talking about a Spurs club who haven't had a trophy in 17, 18 years, haven't ever had anything probably as good as the Europa League since the Europa League started in the 60s, because I think they won it twice in the 50s or 60s.
70 years, yeah.
They had a Carabao Cup since 99 or something. And everybody knows that that's not the biggest cup going around.
Yeah.
And a Europa League is pretty big. Like, it's not a Premier League or a Champions League, but it's a pretty big competition in the end of the day.
Probably the fourth highest you can win. FA Cup probably just pips it.
Well, when you look at it recently, the FA Cup pips it. But if you would go back historically, the Europa League's a bigger competition than the FA Cup. And probably not now.
Yeah,
just because of the format and everything. Those teams not dropping down from the Champions League did make a big difference, I think, in this campaign.
Imagine Dortmund dropping in.
But I see it as Ange should get more time, because also you don't know how the club gets around this trophy. It's like, can we take it to the next step? You also know what you're getting from Ange in the sense that when he's got his players going, we even saw it in little tiny patches this year, probably nothing big, but when he has Van de Ven and Romero, when he has Maddison.
He says this. He wins.
Yeah, he wins. And it is hard, especially a system and so unique like Ange's. And these systems are hard, and it's very similar with Amorim.
Yeah.
These systems, like, you look at these other teams, when you go look at the Evertons and you go look at Mourinho football and stuff, they're more so like, get those two or three really good players and get the role players around them.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could just play off that because you're depending on that individual quality in the final third, but then you're just like team compact football.
Yeah.
But it's harder. When I look at Amorim, again, I think you have to give him time, just because otherwise it's this huge cycle that just goes around and we're not seeing anything different from United.
Yeah.
But I do think that he doesn't have too much time as well because of how bad he finished. I think, like we said, if Amorim's come in and he's finished 10th even, you're like, that's not great, but we can kick on. There was just probably not much at all shown this year. Like, we go look at it, he beat Fulham and, he beat Villa on the final day, but it's final day.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it was relegation teams and that's it.
Because it was City, Villa, Fulham.
City was under Van Nistelrooy though.
Was it? No, I think it was under Amorim. That was one of his first games.
Was it?
I think because he beat Pep. He's beaten Pep 3 times, I think, this season.
Oh, it might have been,
Yeah, so I think they're the 3 teams he's beaten from the top half. And even I think Fulham now back in the bottom half after last night. So,
yeah.
I understand that, but I'm at the stages, and I said this on podcast, I said this in real person, you guys, outside the podcast, I would still have 10 Hag today. And that's just me as a person. I don't think sacking managers does enough these days. Because blame the manager is one thing, blame the ownership, blame the players another thing. I feel like going in this cycle, like you said, this cycle that keeps going, you're not going in it because what you're doing is you're getting this manager's system and their system players in, and by the time they get all of that in, they're sacked. So it's like a constant cycle of like mediocrity because you have the ups and downs.
I think I mentioned this to you on Saturday morning. If United aren't going to go all in on Amorim, they need to sack him.
I agree with that.
And because the thing is, his system is so unique that he needs a little bit like Ange when he's got his starting 11 going. He needs his players. Yeah. There are certain players that suit the system. Like it is a very, very unique system that doesn't work with those low block players.
Fullback players.
Yeah, it doesn't work with those counter-attack forwards. It really needs that creative edge, especially at the 10s.
Yeah.
A quite clinical striker to be able to complement those 10s. And if you're not going to go all in on that, it's like, well, I don't want it to be another one of those things where we go partially in for 18 months. He brings in half his players, so then it actually causes a bigger problem for the next manager.
Exactly.
And then it's like, well, now we're going to sack him. It's like, it needs to happen now or they just need to bite the bullet, unless it's completely terrible. But what would you say a pass mark is for United next year? Top half?
I said that on the rebuild video. I think they'll be aiming for a top 8 finish for like a potential Conference League coefficient spot.
Yeah.
But realistically, a top 10 finish would be ideal. But again, you're focused on Premier League, so it should be a top 8 finish, right? They've got no other games.
You saw
what Napoli did this season. When you focus, I'm not saying they'll win the league.
Completely different though.
I'm not saying they'll win the league, but no, look, that was not many good players, but a manager just getting the best out of his players. If Amorim can get the best out of his players, I think a top 8 finish should be expected.
Well, we'll see the real Amorim next year because in the end of the day, he's had 9 months with the players, which means really come match day one, 9 months with the players plus no European competition or World Cup this year. Yeah. So he's got a pre-season with the players. So he'll have a long time. He'll have 25 games under their belt plus 2 months of pre-season to go into match day one. And no matter what everyone says, whether you get the players or not, he will have 1 or 2 signings. Cunha was here we go last night.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a few of those signings, it looks like. And they look decent enough signings. So it's therefore we go, well, if you can't at least take that next step to 10th, 8th to 10th, around that, it's like, well, wait a minute. You've had the time to get these players adjusted. You can't give me the excuse that these players are completely shit because they aren't great, but they're definitely not 15th, 16th, 17th, where we've been sitting for the last 15, 20 weeks.
And then with Ange, do you sack Ange now?
No.
So this is the same thing with Amorim, though, I think, with Ange. With Ange, like you said, if you don't sack him now, you have to give him the whole...
already
the whole
too
season.
late,
I think you have to give him the whole season. You can't do this 3-month thing. You saw what United didn't work. You see what clubs have done in the past, or bigger clubs have done in the past. It never works. If you want to go with Ange, you're going in for 12 months.
But I think you have to... I agree but disagree. If it is as bad as it was this year...
If you're in for 21 losses again, obviously you're sacking him.
Yeah, after 3 months, I think if you're not sitting 10th...
Yeah, okay.
Even maybe 12th. Yeah. I'm not talking about like where Ten Hag was. I think we were like 8th.
Yeah, we're 4 points off top 4.
Yeah, type thing, and then they sacked him. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying like if they are where they were this year, a bit similar to Amorim, if they are where they were this year, 3 months in, and they're sitting in that 15th to 18th spot, even probably 13th to 18th, around that spot, then you got to do it.
Because like Angel wants some money, he wants some more players. Because look, their squad's full, but it's full of misfits. Like it's like Matisse Tell's there, and like Otto Bird never really played, and they got these players, and it's like I don't think any of them are really Ange. Like starting 11's Ange players, like you said. And he always says that when I have my starting 11, I'm one of the best managers going around. I think statistically, it probably is true.
True, yeah.
But like injuries and also I think the depth, he obviously doesn't like it. There's a reason he keeps saying when I have my squad, it's like saying to the owners, well, fucking give me 200 million, like the other big clubs get, and then I'll go.
Yeah.
And look, if he has 200 million spent, you have to produce. But like, look, you've won a European trophy, you're in the Champions League, there's income there. I'd like to see Ange go around again because I wouldn't see any other better manager available for Tottenham. Because look, I don't think big managers want to go to Tottenham anymore. They've probably looked at this and they're gone like, this looks like hell. But Ange is like, I want to go through hell. I'm happy to go through hell. Just back me in. And I feel like, look, he's come up with these cold quotes again. Like third season was better than the second season.
But then did you see the
So
other?
you get killed
He's
off.
like, sometimes the main character gets killed off in the third season.
But look, even in football terms, he said it as a joke, but in football terms, it normally happens. The third season is of, like, Arsenal's third year was not the year they pushed him, where Saliba came across and started. Gabriel was playing well.
Well, I think, his third full season.
So yeah, he had that half with initial. But so third season in football is also a big year as well. Like, it's like in test matches for cricket. Your third day is your moving day. Third day, things happen.
Yeah.
He'll either skyrocket, and I think that can be in a top 4 battle, or hopefully, worst comes to worst, a middle race, sort of top 8, top 9 battle. But you're right. If he's out to the top half, he probably goes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying like you... Yeah, I agree. If he's sitting in and around it, you don't sack him until the end of the season.
Yeah, because there's no point getting rid of a manager that quickly. All right, let's finish off this episode with our season grades for teams. Yep. Okay, we'll go in ladder order again. It makes it easier because...
No worries.
Look, Southampton F.
Yep, I've
Ipswich, I put D.
Same.
Yeah, because we didn't expect them to stay up, but they were not that great. And then Leicester F.
I went Leicester D minus.
Okay, so you basically...
So it was close. I don't know if you can put it bad as Southampton, but in the same way, when you look at their squad...
I looked at their squad.
They have a lot better squad than Southampton, so... But I don't know if I could put them the F because I don't know if it was a complete fail that they didn't stay up. Looking at the squads now of all the other teams in the Premier League. Like, they have a good squad when we put them in comparison to the championship teams, and we put them in comparison to Ipswich and Southampton, 100%. Levels above. Like, they're the squad where you look at it and you go, you see Premier League quality there.
Yeah.
But, again, did they have more Premier League quality than Wolves?
No, probably not.
Did they have more Premier League quality than Brighton, the Forest, than the...
They had Premier League experience,
West
though.
Ham.
They had Premier League experience, though.
Yeah, I know.
And that has to show for something. And they came off 100 and something points. Like...
Yeah, I know.
And I know the manager changed. Steve Cooper was a weird one. I like Steve Cooper, but the more I've looked at him, the more I realise he's not that great of a manager.
Do you think if Maresca was still there, they stay up?
Ooh, probably.
You reckon?
Look, it'd be die by the sword, like Burnley type stuff. But I reckon he was better at it than Company would be at it.
Also, is that on the basis that they keep like a Drewsbury Hall?
Well, Drewsbury Hall definitely stay. There's no way Chelsea's buying Drewsbury Hall or any of the teams buying. So they keep Drewsbury Hall. Vardy's more clinical.
What has even happened to him? Does he even play?
He plays Conference League.
Yeah.
Look, Maresca's there. Maybe they're competing until the last 2 match days. But they were gone in March.
Yeah.
Early March, and that's probably been kind. Look, I just saw at all the teams, they have
Spurs go down if Maresca's there.
Can you imagine Spurs go down there in the good year?
Do you see the stat was like they've had the most losses ever of a team that
hasn't gone down, yeah.
But they had a few wins, and that was why. Like 11
the goal difference is still
11 wins
positive.
keeps you up.
Yeah.
Always.
They would have got relegated in La Liga and Serie A, I think.
Oh, really?
This season if they had the same points, which is crazy. But look, Leicester's an F for me. Southampton obviously is awful. They were just shit. And Ipswich are giving a D because they did not have Premier League talent, but going down, obviously, you need to get a poor score. Look, Spurs, I put B because they got the Europa League. I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if that's fair.
I looked at these rankings purely as Premier League rankings.
Look, it's an F for the Premier League. I just put a B because they won a trophy. This is like...
Okay, as a season, a B probably as well, but I put an F.
Yeah, obviously it's... And we've talked about it, like it's a long fix, but it can be a quick fix if Ange can turn it around himself. Same story with United, it's an F there as well.
I put an F minus, if that even is possible.
An F?
Yeah, I saw that. Like 5 Fs.
I saw some posts the other day. It was like triple F. I'm like, yeah, look, it's like that.
I don't know if it could have gone worse because can United get relegated? Probably not.
This is what someone was saying. It's impossible for United to get relegated because you've got big players that will just save you on a day. And we probably look if you take our results versus the top 8, we're probably like a good mid-table side. Like we drew to Arsenal. We've beaten Man City. We've taken a point off. We've taken...
Couldn't be the likes of like West Ham and those type of teams, eh?
Yeah. Like, look, we've done a proper relegation battle team season. Like
Yeah.
we've parked the bus against some big teams and gotten some results, like Liverpool, and we've lost to some shit.
Yeah.
And that is the worst. If it gets worse than this, we're going down.
Oh, definitely.
Like,
I just don't think it does. I don't know how it can. Like,
can it possibly work,
unless
mate?
they like, when you got the likes of Bruno and even some of those defenders, in the end of the day, if they really needed to, they just park the bus.
And
like,
Casemiro, like, he's
Yeah.
a Champions League winner. Like,
yeah,
I know he's
there's
been
enough.
old and
There's
past
too much quality there to even think about that. Like, there'll be those 5 games, even though you're playing like complete shit always.
Yeah.
That you just somehow have individual brilliance,
Yeah.
like we saw.
Like Everton, Bruno scored that crazy goal. So F for United. West Ham, I went D. Now look, the ladder looks good now, but it was looking really bleak. And I think this is the same thing with me this is more the club, a D, because look, you sack Moyes, look he's done with Everton.
Yeah.
Had Lopetegui, probably wasn't the right man because it was the exact same Moyes. I said it, the player Moyes. And then you brought in Potter, who I think's looked even worse since the Brighton days and the Chelsea days. I think Potter got lucky at Brighton. I think he just lucked into a good team.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get exposed. I reckon they sack a manager again next season. And I think
Probably.
they're just not set up for the future. I think West Ham are cooked.
I'll put them C minus.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And looking at where I put them for my prediction, they should be an F borderline.
That's sort of, where I went with this
But
as well.
I still think like they still didn't do that bad. Finishing 14th,
14th in the end.
and I think the C minus D mark is probably fair.
I think it's around that mark there.
Yeah, I don't know if they weren't a fail because they're not a United or a Spurs who.
I think we had too much expectation.
Yeah, they're not a United or a Spurs who finishing and United and Spurs finish below them anyways.
Yeah.
But finishing down there is like the complete like surprise, like failure type thing. I think we had those high expectations, so they have to be in that DC minus range. But I don't know. I think as you said, our expectations were just
Way
too high. Yeah.
I'll be interested where we put them next year for the predictions because they could lose a lot of players. Like a lot of players could be leaving that club. Wolves, I put B+. I'm pretty happy with Wolves.
I put C.
Okay, it's probably you probably had them predicted near that spot, didn't you? Where did you have them predicted? Because they finished 13th. I think.
I had them pretty 14th.
Yeah, so look, I had them actually 13th as well. But like, at the end of the day, I think though, considering all the off-field drama, and considering they started the season off really, really poorly, to find that belief, that confidence, that consistency, Cunha, Strand Lars, and some of the signings, the midfielders as well, to turn it around the way they did in season, I'm giving them the bonus because they were the side that was going to get relegated.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Like the way they brought in some good signings like Munetzi at the back, even like some players like Bellegarde and like finding form, and the way they've sort of set up for the future with the new manager, I think it's a massive B+ for me.
Yeah, I think I've gone more a C just because I think they've got some quite good quality.
Cunha.
Yeah, like real A-class quality going around. And I think finishing in that 14th, and when you look at the first half of the season and all that combined, like, I just don't know if a B season for them would be pushing that top 10, I would say. A B to A, that would be around that. So I just think they fall just behind that. But we're talking real fine margins here in the end of the day.
Couple points to get you on there. Everton, I went B+ for them as well.
I went A. And I just think I went A. When you look at them versus Wolves, I think their team is a lot thinner. Than Wolves is. I also think that, like, when we look at Everton, them being in that like relegation fight the last couple of years, and they were just clear of that this year. Miles clear of it. And I think they showed again what they can do. And I think if they can continue on this trajectory, they can get to that 11th, 10th place next year, just based on the way they play.
I'd love to have them back there. It'd be good to have them in the top.
They're going to be the team that I think I'll place a little bit higher up the ladder. Not significantly.
Moyes is there. They need to sign a striker.
Yeah.
They need to sign a striker because obviously that's the big problem right now.
Definitely.
Palace next. I had A+ because they won the FA Cup. Again, I'm taking some cup competition.
Yeah, okay. A+ if you bring in that. I've done B for their Premier League season.
Another thing to think of though for Premier League though, that's their most Premier League points ever in their history.
True.
Like maybe this is just me just loving Oliver Glasner as well. Like I love the work he's done.
Yeah.
Big players
Love
left.
the
At
bottle
least,
of wine.
yeah, literally. Elise left. Chalobah was there on loan, then left mid-season because Chelsea had a crisis. I reckon they've done very, very well. They started shit. Again, they were in the relegation. They were bottom two. Start of the season. They've got on this great run back end of the year. Unbeaten the last, I think, 11 games, something like that. I think it's been a fantastic year in that regard. And a trophy as well.
Yep.
Obviously, take Prem for maybe it's just an A or maybe a A-, but I think their year has to be an A+ for me.
I think that's fair.
Fabulous. Fulham next. I think it's going to a B.
Yeah, same as me.
This is Fulham.
Yeah, it's just Fulham season. They've got some quality.
Yeah.
Probably not enough quality to be pushing much higher.
Yeah.
So I think a B is the fairest way to go.
The best way to say to Fulham, you can back them in for 3 wins and 2 losses in a row. That's literally that. They just go in little runs and they finish where they finish. Brentford, I went A-. I don't know if that's a little bit overs.
I went B+.
Yeah, so in and around the area. I think, again, they've just overachieved again.
Yeah, their squad again when you compare it to these other teams.
And the money, they don't spend any money.
Well, I think this solidifies why I put a C for Wolves. Do they have a much better team than Wolves?
No, they've probably got the exact same level. So
yeah. And look where they're finishing and look where Wolves is finishing.
I think I've taken too much in-season context with Wolves because Brentford, they've been clear mid-table. Like, the whole season. Like, last year they dropped in to the bottom half a little bit. Yeah, but this year they were clear. Yeah.
And as well, they lose Tony and they didn't have him last year, but it's still, they showed last year that when they didn't have him,
they struggled.
And this year they were just able to really put all the pieces together of that puzzle.
It's a big shout.
And really have a good back end of the year as well.
Yeah, finished strong. Yeah. I think unbeaten the last 7 games for them. Do you think Thomas Frank ever gets that big job or is he just stuck there forever?
I don't know if he does that well with these big clubs.
Yeah.
I think he's very much... No, I think he's one of these managers who does well there because he's able to really fine tune week to week. I think like you've seen with United with Ten Hag, if you start playing with your game plan and not having a solidified game plan,
it doesn't work.
Not that it doesn't work. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but you see with fans, they don't really like it. They want to see if you don't ever they're big to keep managers who have game plans, and it's die by the sword type
game
shit
plan
always.
Merchants, bro. Game plan merchants.
Yeah, it's this big thing of 2025. It's everybody needs their game plan. It's Flynn always sits on where I'm sitting right now, and he goes, but Arteta, I saw something coming. It's there's something he was finishing in the same position as Ten Hag, but he's I don't see a game plan from Ten Hag type thing, and that's where I think Thomas Frank lacks. Thomas Frank, I think, is really good in terms of he more plays to how his opposition play.
He brings your team up though.
Yeah,
he can bring it up.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. He's very much he likes to fine tune things week in, week out type thing. I wouldn't say when I look at Brentford football and I could see a distinct plan. You always see when they're versing the top end teams, they don't really die by the sword. They more like to sit back type thing, give the other team possession, use Mbeumo, use the likes of Wissa.
Yeah. Speed.
Yeah, that speed. But then when they're playing those bottom end teams, they're able to now transition into a more attacking based brand like we've seen in the past. And maybe he wouldn't do that at a big club because the reason he might be doing that is because the players he's got. Exactly. Yeah. Because he does seem to, whenever he versus a team who's on par or worse than him,
play football.
Play football.
Yeah.
So you think about it, when you go to a big club, most teams are worse than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we've seen with the likes of Chelsea and United in the past when they verse City and stuff, and they do sit back.
Still sit back.
They do get hammered big time. The press get on them, fans get on them, just because they're a big club. And you'd say in those instances, both those teams are worse than a City.
Yeah.
So you wonder what would happen there. But I don't know. I think he deserved... The moral of the story is, going on that big rant, I think he deserves the opportunity. I just don't know how well he goes. He might be like an Unai.
I say to finish that point, that for me it might not be Prem. I feel like it might be different, like a Serie A.
Maybe.
I feel like he's very tactical, like a Serie A manager would be. Like I'm expecting maybe a club, maybe 2 years time to go after him. Bournemouth next. I went B+.
It's exactly the same.
I think it was solid without being great. I really got in that hype train when they went over Christmas like unbeaten.
Yep.
They've beaten all the big boys at home. They've just struggled into little boys.
Yeah.
That's the next step for Bournemouth.
I think so.
Can you be a...
They remind me of an old school Brighton.
Yeah, can you boss the small teams a little bit more and get more points there? Because then you have Europe.
Yep.
They're very close to Europe, so I think B+ for me. Brighton next, I went B-.
I went A.
See, I'm confused with Brighton. Because
I know what you mean.
I have the expectations that they started so well, they could just continue to be good, but then they fell off. Then they were good again. Then they fell off, and they finished good. And I'm like, what are you? Are you a good team or are you a bad team?
Well, I just think, again, very similar to like a Brentford. They lack a little bit of quality. And when you look at a team, when you're lacking quality, you always have like...
A little ups
yeah,
and
you're
downs,
always going to have the like... You're always going to have the suspicion that you could drop off at any point in time.
Yeah.
And they always bounce back. And that's how I look at it. Like a ninth place for that Brighton team, when you look at the teams around them, they would have the worst team on paper of the top 10. Yep. And whether now we look at those names and we go, maybe they don't have the worst team. Going into the season, they definitely had. And there was a reason everyone had them, whether not as bad as me, don't get me wrong. I'm the exception here, but had them in that 12th to 15th range.
Yeah, bottom half, team.
So... that's why I've given them that A.
Yeah.
I just think that, but I know what you mean. I was confused by them in the sense that where I put them in the ladder as well. So,
I just look at it and I loved Hertzler as a manager, like past tense. This season, I don't think he's really stuck to his guns. And maybe I'm being too hipster, and I want to see, you know, like what Glasner and Iraola do, where they just stick to their guns and look, they might beat some big teams, but lose some small teams. And Brighton sort of just did neither. They sort of just were okay. They went through patches, but they didn't win in 11 games, something like that. They went through these really weird spells, but they're always there. And I feel like if it wasn't so bad for Spurs United, you know, and company, look, if West Ham were competitive, Brighton could easily be where probably I think they should. They feel like they should be. I think they feel like they should be like a 13th team. But obviously,
they did.
I know, and that's why I'm a bit split. So I've gone with a B-. So look, they're still above par. I just don't think it was their best football nor their best tactical season they've had.
The only team above them that you would say shouldn't be anywhere near there is Forest.
Yeah.
And again, Forest have a lot better team on paper than Brighton.
I know. It's just weird. I looked at a lot of other people's reviews after I made my list to make sure I wasn't so far off it, and a lot of people have Brighton as like a B+ or an A-. I don't know. I've just
that's fair.
I've gone harsh on them. Forest
A+.
I went A. Just because
they missed out
late. Because they got conference rather than... I think Europa League was the bare minimum considering how well they did. Look, do it 12 months ago, of course it's an A+.
I think this is a Spurs story though of last year.
Oh,
in sense
that's
that
a bit of 4-day chess. You get the trophy.
I just think it's a Spurs of last year in the sense that if you went into the season, and you told me that Forest are finishing 8th, you're 100% going A+. Wow, like
I'll change A+.
Yeah, that's how I think that's how I look at it, and I get it. Where they were, it was probably a bit of a letdown, and you saw that by their owners and stuff like that. Like it was a little bit of a letdown, but again, quality is always going to come to the fruition to the top of the chain, and that's what ended up happening. Happening, Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea, City, who
big teams.
Although we talk about Forest having quality, have levels above.
Yeah.
And they are always the ones in the back end of the season that end up coming through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think any European football for Forest is the biggest tick on the list.
We'll let them in and around the bottom half. So yeah, okay. I'll give you that. I'll change A+.
Yeah.
Villa, I put B+.
I put B/B+.
I'm realizing doing a lot of in-season context, but they were a bottom half side. I look like they were 11th, I think, in December time. What a great run second half of the season. They've built depth. They continue to play some good football coming the end of the season. They look like a coherent side. They made the quarterfinals of the Champions League. They got beaten by the finalists. Yep. Look, I think it's a really good year. Considering, because again, like we said, they could have easily been, I had them predicted 5th. They could have easily finished 15th. Because of double 2 games a week, Champions
definitely
League.
Right.
I did very, very well.
I've gone B/B+ because B+ from everything you said.
Yeah.
Then I've gone B just because last year they finished 4th.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And it was just like, can I really give a B plus? Because B plus to me means you achieved better than your expectations.
Or you achieve the
Better
ambitious. If you achieve the ambitious expectation, that you get a B plus or an A minus.
Exactly. So, and I would say based on what they did last year, based on their squad and everything, if you were to take out Champions League football, which you probably shouldn't, they should be top 4.
Yeah.
I would say like 4th, 5th would have been that pass mark.
Oh, but it's maybe top 5, I'd say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because I'd say on paper have them over Chelsea, but to be honest, Newcastle's team, like their starting 11 and their 3 subs, I'd probably pick Newcastle's.
I say I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No.
Isaac and Gordon and Bruno and...
No.
No?
No. Not when you're bringing in Rashford and Asensio who are sitting on the bench.
But we didn't have that at the start of the season.
But you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, take into consideration. But you have to take into consideration how well Tonali's played as well then.
Yes, exactly. But, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But, okay, I would put them pretty much on par.
That's what I'm saying. So I have them then in the top 5, just in 5th.
Yeah.
So they're only 1 position off, and they're all, like, 1 point off.
But that's why I think the B/B plus. I think the B plus because you bring in the Champions League.
Yeah.
You talk about everything you spoke about. And then it's just the B. It's like, well, in the end of the day, they're going to not be playing Champions League football next year.
They'll be kicking them. And apparently they've appealed the Premier League about the foul last night on Biandia.
Well, what does that do?
Because they thought they would have obviously they score that goal, and then they reckon they at least get a point, and that point would be enough for them to...
Correct, but what are the Premier League going to do? Take off the points of United. So I don't know what the appeal really does at this point of the year.
I think it's having a sook. It was a wrong decision, but there's been worse wrong decisions this year.
Yes, exactly.
Chelsea, I've also gone B+.
Yep.
For the fact that, look, you've got Champions League football now. You might win a trophy. It means nothing, really, because Conference League is a fucking tin pot trophy. But look, a trophy and top 5, you take that. New manager. Palmer had a rough spell in the season, but you continue to improve. They just need some veterans in this side, I feel like, next year. But look, I think a really, really good season for Chelsea.
Very good.
Nothing really else to say about that.
Yeah, not much else.
Newcastle A.
I've gone B+.
Ooh, again, I'm taking a Carabao Cup trophy, 70-year waits over, 50-year waits over. You get top 4. Like, look, I didn't have them. Look, I might have had them Champions League through some sort of competition.
They finished 5th, didn't they? Not that that makes a difference.
Also, yeah, this is before they updated list. Sorry, yes, they did finish 5th. Chelsea finished 4th, didn't they? Yeah, so they lost last night. My bad. I've got the original list. Look, but still, top 5, which means Champions League football and a trophy.
No. Amazing season. I just think, A's are harder to come by.
You're a harsher marker.
No, yeah, I just think that B+ is like you achieved better than what you should have.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what they did. They're a team now who my expectation is 6th to 8th.
Yep.
And they achieved better.
Yeah, 5th.
Which is 5th.
Yeah.
They didn't have European
football
football as well.
No European football this year. Yeah, true.
So you would say 6th to 8th. 6th to me would have been a pass mark. They finished 5th. Yeah. They had no European football. So that's where I put the B+, because if they finished 6th,
you probably have them up
at a B.
Yeah, you probably would, wouldn't you?
I'd have them at a B.
Yeah.
So one spot higher, does that get you?
But it's like what you said with Aston Villa. It's a Champions League thing.
Yeah, it is.
I think for me, for Newcastle as well, not in my wildest dreams I had them. I thought they would have, as I said, the holding season. I had pressure on Eddie Howe at the start of this year.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was the man for the job. They had Tonali coming back. I didn't know about the depth of the back line because of the injuries. But they were back to Newcastle of 2022, whatever it was.
I know what you mean.
They were flying. So look, I was really happy with that. City went D+.
I just went D.
Just because, look,
it's City, yeah.
It's City, so that's the D. I'll put a plus because, look, they salvaged 3rd and nearly got 2nd.
You're right. It's just City, though. Yeah. When you win 4 Premier Leagues in a row.
And then you win no trophies as well.
Yeah, and you win nothing. And it's like, they also came last minute and just like put themselves in a Champions League spot. They were pretty bad all year for City.
For City, yeah.
For City. And you have to do that for City because we're talking about like arguably the best Premier League team for an era that's ever existed.
Yeah.
And they were well off the pace this year.
Yeah. What is it? 5 in last 6 they've won?
Yeah. Like realistically, the way I see it is, I would have put them a B minus. Anything except they winning the league.
I think we did that the year they didn't. I mean, we didn't rating them, but I think I must have been reading some ratings, but they even got like a B minus a few years back when they didn't win the league or something like that. I've been looking through.
I think if they finish second and let's say they just missed out by 5 points or something,
you
put them for a B minus. So, and then you'd put them a C if they finish second but weren't competitive, and then they finish third. So,
D. Yeah, I just went D plus. I think the way they end up salvaging it.
I think a D plus is fair. I think a D plus is fair.
They had no right to be third. How bad they were.
But it's City. That's the only thing. The whole season.
We said this.
Whole season, I was still up until like Feb, thinking could they win the league?
Still win the league.
Yeah, that's what my thought process was because it was City.
Arsenal. This is a weird one. Look, I went C.
I went C minus.
It's probably a C minus, but look, I knew they were going to finish second.
I knew they were okay. I didn't think they were going to finish second. Well, when you look at it, it was them and City, them and City, them and City, and their whole argument was whether looking at the best City team that's ever existed. That City team doesn't exist pretty much.
Now Liverpool take their
and then they don't take it, and then it's not just they don't take it; they weren't in.
They weren't in the fight at all.
They weren't in the fight. And if they were in the fight, I probably would have given them a C plus.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree.
And then them being completely out of the fight, a C or a C minus.
Let me just quickly check this. I'm pretty sure they never led all season.
Sounds about right.
Like, is it them that did it? I don't need to take too long. I'm going to drag this. Here we go. So it was Brighton, City for the first 5 weeks, then Liverpool till match day 9, then City again, and then Liverpool for the rest.
Yeah.
So the year that City was really shit, they still led for 7 weeks, and Arsenal didn't lead at all. So that's probably fair enough. Arsenal for me. It was just a C because look, Champions League was alright. They were good in some games, but this is what I sort of expected for them. Maybe not this bad. Maybe that's why I C minus comes into it.
If you were to tell me that City won't win the league, I would have thought Arsenal would win the league.
Yeah, probably fair enough. That's
all. That's how I look at it.
To the point. That's very good.
Yeah.
And then obviously Liverpool's an A plus.
A plus.
Klopp leaves.
Yeah, brand new manager in. I think everyone expected them to have a bit of that like regrouping year.
Yeah.
Well, I did it, especially. I was like, this is the year of regrouping. They might lose a few people. Slot's obviously got a similar game plan to Klopp, but he's going to put his spin on it. Yeah. Give it the first 6 months to come in. No. Straight away from match week 1, pretty much.
Go.
Go. And it was like, even we were speaking, me and Flynn was so convinced it was like,
the fall off.
This is just manager bounce type thing. Like, they needed fresh eyes after Klopp for a while.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough there going. City and Arsenal are going to finish higher than them. Like, they'll finish third type thing. Like, third was already better than we expected. But no, they just kept going and going and going. And it was like, when are they going to stop? And we got to a point probably about that February mark where we go, they're not stopping.
They've won it. By February, they had them. I think the best example, I've said this throughout the whole year, the final time I guess for this season, I have to say it, Slot is the cool, calm, composed Klopp that allows this to sustain itself rather than be highs and lows. I think that was a plus. He maximised the players because he plays this sort of more calm and composed system. It's not as high energetic, so it means players have the energy to keep going. Salah can keep going. Gravenberch better suited. McAllister becomes a top midfielder in world football now. And I've always stood by Van Dijk's side, and I'll take this crown or feather in my cap because this season probably the best centre back in world football.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
And look, I've backed him in a lot now the last 3 years, and when you could argue being 5th best or 6th best or 3rd best, said I still believe he's number 1 on his day. He's still the best centre back, and he's shown that. And what happened was down the spine of that team, Salah performed, Gravenberch, McAllister performed, Van Dijk performed with Kanate fit, and then Alisson was in goal.
Yep.
And look, I said they'll be third. I think I said at the start of the season to be City clear, and then second and third Arsenal and Liverpool. I think I was bold for saying that at the time because everyone thought Liverpool were going to be like 5th or 6th. Look, I wasn't right, but I'm going to take it because they were competitive throughout the season. Obviously, very, very competitive, winning the lot.
You look good.
And I think no one said that.
Nice prediction there because I don't think anyone else
no one would have had
put
them
them probably top 3.
Yeah.
Maybe a few people put them in that 4th. So
if you're a Liverpool fan, you put them 3, but the rest probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But there we go. There is our season grades and our total prediction points.
Yep.
We need to move on to next year. We need to forget this season.
Yeah.
And start again for United, for our predictions, for the lot.
A bit of a gap, though, without this European football, this...
Transfer talk, definitely. And we're going to have to talk about the whole relegation. I've been teasing this now for like months. But
I'd love to jump on
We'll do a full podcast episode in about 5 or 6 weeks' time when it's properly dead about how we fix the relegation.
I think that's all you need to talk about as well, because that could go on for ages.
That could be 2
I
hours.
think we come in with a few ideas going in, and those ideas are going to expand to 30-minute conversations. So
it'll be exciting. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to take a bit of a break. I got exam, you got work. We'll wait for maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
Recharge, and then we'll be back hopefully with a mix. We'll go mixed groups. We'll go me, you and Nathan, me, Flynn, you, me, Flynn.
Yeah,
Nathan.
whatever
We'll mix
works.
it up in the off season. We'll get the combined couch together once again, and then we'll be back. From like 2.5 months time? I swear it comes so fast.
Yeah,
August time. So we'll be in literally 3 months time. We'll be back again.
Yep.
Bring on the predictions. Thanks for us, guys. 5-star Spotify, 5-star Apple Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for joining me, mate. We'll see you guys next season or in the off season. Till next time. See you later.